Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects, my ideas I'm pursuing. No matter what the problem, the solution, I'm proving it. Let's talk about it and open up the dialogue. Contractors telling their stories about how they got it started and how they keep it going. The passion fuels the mission. Now we blasting into orbit, we gone. That's where we grow from. Started with the vision, make the pitch and knock it out the park like home runs. We keep it moving, self-belief, no doubt. Pass off the mic to my man's Jim Cloud. I don't wanna stop for nothing.
Welcome to Contractor Stories. I am your host, Jim Clouk, and Bob Muller, our contributors here. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Jim. Great to be here, man. Today's one of those days, you know, I think we're going to be bringing on an interesting character, to say the least, and we'll get to know a little bit of a backstory about a fellow I think I might have introduced you to.
Yeah, Leo Smith is his name, and he's from the Great White North. If you don't know what that means, everybody, he's from Canada. That is the country north of the United States of America. And I know something about that country because I actually grew up there. Speaking of a backstory, we should do a story on me one day, Bob.
I think we're going to have that show very soon.
So anyways, Leo is from Canada. He is an entrepreneur. He's a contractor, has been ever since he was a child. And from what I understand, he's got quite a story.
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty cool story. You know, not too many people at the age that he was, you know, kind of took on the type of task that he did. Went, you know, full speed into the contracting space at a very young age. Had a brilliant idea and ran with it.
Yeah. All right, let's go out to him right now. You ready?
Sounds good.
Jim Clouk here on the Contractor Stories podcast. I hope you're all having a great day. Another great story coming up. Actually, many stories are going to be coming up here from our friend Leo Smith. He is from Canada, the Toronto area. Hey, Leo, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing fine. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Doing great. Ready for a you know, really interesting story today. I've kind of met Leo a little bit in the past. Don't really know his story that well, but man, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about him, get into the man behind all of these great businesses that he's part owner in, and just really want to get to know his story. This should be fun.
Yeah, what's great about Contractor Stories is every contractor has a story or two, and there are many different ones. And what I like to do, Leo, to begin with, is to go back in time to learn where you came from as a boy and how you got into being a contractor. And then, of course, we'll end up, you know, where you are today. So you're from Canada. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I assume that you are a native Canadian. You've been there all your life.
Yeah, grew up in the streets of Toronto. Beautiful place to grow up. Brunswick and College area, if anybody knows the area. Was bullied a lot because, was a geeky, shy kid. And I remember being beaten up a lot, mentally more so than physically. But yeah, there was some bully kids in the neighborhood. And that's where we grew up. I remember my first love when I was 12 years old. She was visiting from Scotland with the accent and the eyes, and it was just the best summer ever. Playing hide and seek and playing with the neighborhood kids in the street. We didn't have video games, no internet back then, and and that's how we were brought up.
Well, they were simpler times back then. You're probably around Bob's age and my age, right? What decades did you grow up?
In the 80s, it sounds like. I'm 64 in May, so 64 years old. So you wake up one day and you wonder, where the hell did the time go? Right? Time flies. But going back to my life, wasn't easy because I think I was different even back then, because when I was 11 and a half years old, my dad was a firm believer in the work hard ethic. Work hard, nose to the grindstone, and, work hard and things will happen. Stuff like that didn't make sense to me because I knew there had to be a difference between working hard and working smart. So even back then, even though I loved my dad made a lot of sense. What made sense to me was, invest in real estate, save all your money, don't spend your money, just invest. So I adapted that. I took that to heart, but the working hard part, I had a hard time with. And at that point, even though I loved my dad, I thought, okay, there's, my dad, my uncles, my dad has 7 brothers. So, and they all spoke the same language. They were all saying, work hard.
Mm.
And I'm saying, okay, there's a theme here, and that I was having a hard time with. And I thought, okay, I need to see the other side, because, my dad had calluses on his hands, and if you can see my hands, I have no calluses. So I had to go out and find a different side of that story. And after I figured, okay, I'm going to meet rich, successful people in church. But in church, everybody was dressed well. Everybody looked successful. And I thought, okay, this is not working. And who's who, right?
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, how can I do this better? And keep in mind, there's no internet back then, so you can't do a Google search like you can today. So life is much easier today, and from that perspective. So I thought, okay, where do successful people go? Then I thought, okay, they wear custom-made suits. I'm going to get a job in a tailor shop.
Okay.
And
There's some logic.
right, so I lied about my age. I should, I should have said, I was 17. I was 12 at that point.
Wow.
But I was tall, geeky, and shy. So I was tall for my age. So when I said 14, they kind of believed me. But so I found 2 tailor shops within a bus ride of me, which was an hour's distance. And so I went in, put on my powder blue suit. Can you imagine that? A
Mhm.
powder blue suit with bell bottoms at that point. And I thought I looked pretty good. But so I went in to this tailor shop, and it was called Taylor Summers. And went in and asked for the owner, and I said, I need a job. And they said, how old are you? And I said, 14. And you're too young, get out of here. And I didn't even meet the owner. I didn't meet anyone. And I said, geez, I really blew that, right? So I thought, okay, I better do a better job on the next one. But before I go to the next one, since I blew this one anyways, I'm going to try some other tactics to see what's going to work before I blow the next opportunity. Right. And this was the closest one to me. So when I went back, and I remember seeing one of the gentlemen that was sitting behind the counter, and I just walked in like I owned the place. And I said, Peter asked me to start vacuuming. Where's the vacuum? Right. And he pointed to the back, found the vacuum, plugged it in, and vacuumed away. And I figure if the owner comes in and sees me hard working away, he maybe give me a job. So I heard the back door has a bell, and I heard the back door, and I kind of glanced, and I vacuumed more vigorously. And I could see them talking, and he's pointing at me. And he comes over, taps on my shoulder, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, vacuuming. And he says, yeah, get out of here. He took the vacuum away from me and threw me out. The second Saturday, he let me finish vacuuming. Then he threw me out.
Because you did the same thing again.
Because I did the same thing again. Eventually, he offered me a job, right? So when he let me finish vacuuming, I'm not getting paid, but I'm seeing progress. So I'm building on that progress. Then eventually, he offers me a job, and I'm there for about a month or so, and I'm looking for more opportunity. And I always have the Windex bottle with me, and I'm always at the front because I'm not allowed to really sell anything. Right, I'm only allowed to straighten up and stuff, but I'm helping the salespeople, and I'm learning, right? So then I ask for more responsibility. Then Peter, the owner, gives me the sock rack to look after, but not only to straighten out dust and do the inventory, but to order stuff as well. And I'm looking at the sock rack, and I'm seeing grays, blacks, and whites for cruise wear. And I'm thinking, geez, this is freaking boring. But I remember looking at GQ because, I took my job very seriously, and fashion magazine, and I'm seeing polka dots and stripes and, really fun stuff. And I said, well, if I'm going to be in charge of the sock rack, I want to really be in charge of it. I want to order, some of this stuff. And Peter says, It's your funeral. If they don't sell, you're going to eat them.
Ooh.
And I said, okay. So I ordered them. And now the socks come in, and I doing a great display, and I'm doing the mannequins with these socks, and I'm trying to promote them everywhere. And these salespeople are showing suits with shirts and ties, and I go under their arm and I put a a striped sock that matches that stuff. And oh, and this would go really well with this ensemble. Sock sales go up. Now I'm getting the tie rack. Then I get the belts, and eventually I get shirts. And at this point, I'm still working part-time after school and on weekends, and I'm starting to outsell the full-time salespeople. They don't like that, right? So I get more and more responsibility. So I'm about 13 years old now, and I'm thinking I know everything there is about custom suits, even though I'm not allowed to sell them. And I start meeting some of the more affluent clientele. And I remember Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, a retired business people. I went to them and I said, I want to buy you lunch. I couldn't afford lunch, but they took me under their wings and I sucked their brains dry in terms of, getting knowledge and how do I start a business. And I was just a sponge, and I just sucked everybody's brains dry. And David, the retired executive, I sucked stories out of him as well. So those were my first mentors that I had to create. And I didn't even know what a mentor was at that point, but I knew I needed better influencers or a better influence in my life. And, I started saving money. This is where I started listening to Dad, started saving money. Bought my first car before I could drive. My older brother was teaching me how to drive a stick shift. And, I was 12 years old driving in parking lots and stuff. So I was anxious to get driver's license and started saving money and started, making some money. And by the time I was 17, I had to sell my Porsche 914 because I was rebuilding it, because I needed a down payment for a house, because I had done some research and I was looking at the booms and busts for real estate, and I was trying to predict the next boom and bust and trying to time everything. And then as I'm doing research, I figure out, okay, there's no way in hell the average rents are going to carry this mortgage because I have literally almost no down payment. And I thought, okay, how am I going to have this house paid for so it's ready for me by the time I'm ready to move in? And I have a girlfriend, I'm going to get married and stuff like that. Because, I kept reading that, if you have a mortgage, you're paying 2 or 3 times or 4 times the value of the home in interest rates and stuff like that. I said, I'm not going to do that. I want somebody else to pay for it. So, and this is where the construction business started by accident, because now I have to build a basement apartment so I can have dual income, so I can create positive cash flow, right? And that's how the construction business started by accident, because building basement apartments back then was totally illegal. I literally had the mayor hunting me because I was setting a precedent and I was getting other people to do the same. And she wanted me arrested because I was creating something that they couldn't afford to have happen, right? These were single family dwellings. And I figured, okay, over the years, I figured if you're going to arrest me, you're going to have to arrest everyone else, right? And I started collecting names of other people who were building basement apartments because I wanted to be ready. But how that happened was Mr. Ferguson from across the street came over and said, Leo, you're acting very suspiciously. Newspapers on the doors, newspaper on the windows, what are you doing in here? And I said, Mr. Ferguson, my dad trusts you. That means I trust you. Come in, let me show you what I'm doing. And then I said, by the way, we could do the same thing for you. We can have a total stranger pay 70% of your mortgage. When your house is free and clear, kick him out. Now you have a free and clear house. You love the idea?
Yeah. Hey, Leo, can I stop you for a sec?
Sure.
How old are you here at this point?
17.
17.
17.
And you're about to be Donald Trump. Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
Well, I actually met Donald Trump. He was my hero. I flew to New York. I wanted to meet Donald Trump, shook his hand at the Trump Tower way before he became president, but that was a different story. But going back to Mr. Ferguson, he loved the idea. He said, "Are you sure you can get, a stranger to pay 70% of my mortgage?" Yeah, I think I can.
Hmm.
So we did mine. And here's the funny story. When I finished my apartment, and by the way, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was positive I was going to be an architect. I was positive. I would stake my life on it that I was going to be an architect. So through high school, and this is where, the designing the basement, I did at least 10 different layouts for the basement, moving the kitchen around, moving the bathrooms around, and, to get the best layout, because I didn't believe in hallways. Hallways wasted a lot of space. We did traffic flow patterns, and I had it down to a science. It was freaking exciting for me. So the design was fun. The demolition was fun. Then it came time for framing, right? How long do you think I lasted in the framing stage working with these? I timed it 50 minutes. 50 minutes, because I told myself, I freaking hate this shit. I hate working with my hands. I hate this, and I threw the hammer down. I didn't have a solution, but I think this is where I veered off, because everybody else would say, it's not so bad working with my hands, and they keep doing it. But because I said I hate this shit, right? It forced me to find a solution. And the solution to come up with was, one of my uncles was a self-taught carpenter. He was on a job site a few days later. And I figured, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm too busy with school. The workload was incredible, right? I'm trying to run a business, and I'm trying to get these projects. I'm more concerned about, landing the other clients than finishing my own project. And as soon as I'm starting to put paint on the wall, and I hired the most difficult project was the taping. And I tried to do that. How difficult could it be? So I made a mess of it. So I hired someone to come in and do the taping and the feathering. And I thought, geez, that's skill, right? I was using like a 3-inch or 4-inch knife. He was using a 12-inch. Why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think
because
of that?
Leo, you weren't trained to do that as a tradesperson. That's why you bring the experts in, right?
Exactly. So anyway, so I'm watching that. So I'm fascinated by this guy doing the taping, and he's like a brain surgeon to me. Then the other guy that I was fascinated with was the flooring guy, Peter, who was doing the carpet, right? I've never seen carpet installed. And even back then, we're talking more than 40 years ago, he was complaining about being on his hands and knees. And guess what? I spoke with him about a week ago. He's still on his hands and knees installing carpet.
Wow.
So that's where it began.
Yeah, that's quite a story. Bob and I have heard stories of youngsters, beginning their careers in their teens. And what's really interesting, I think, about your story, Leo, is that you started off vacuuming and selling socks, and then you happened to fall into the construction business in the basements. And then where did that lead you after that?
Well, see, then now we're starting to build basements. Mr. Ferguson actually brought in my first 5 clients. And I'm thinking, okay, these people know my dad, right? These people know Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson is vouching for me. But I'm smart enough to look in the mirror and saying, who the hell's going to hire a 17-year-old to build their basements, right? So I'm looking for problems before the problems exist. And I'm trying to be as honest with myself as possible. And I'm saying, Leo, how dare you think you're going to take business away from people who have been doing this for 10 or 20 years? I mean, just look at yourself, right? But going back to my uncle, right? He solved my first problem. And I'm thinking maybe he can solve my second problem, because if he's the face of the company, then there's no problem, right? I'm just a salesman, right? So, and that's what we did. So we're starting to build basements. And I remember some of the basements in Woodbridge, if you remember Woodbridge, Jim. Woodbridge being, heavy Italians, rich Italians. And I remember selling basements back then. I mean, everybody else was quoting 20 to 40,000. We were quoting 80,000. And I remember, quoting 80,000, then ending up going to 160,000. for a
And
basement.
this is
back
what
then.
this is what year? 160,000 in what year?
Oh, geez. Well, 40 years ago, whatever that is, right?
Yeah, that's a long time
So,
ago and a lot of money, but it is Toronto.
yeah.
So,
And we didn't even touch the Bridle Path or Richmond Hill or any of those areas.
Hmm.
But I remember, and I took a lot of pride in going in and saying, okay, our budget is at 80,000. If I have a meeting with this client and I walk away with a happy client still at 80,000, I failed miserably. My job as a salesman is to increase that budget each time that I have a meeting with a client, whether it be new tile, new flooring, new paint schemes, new lighting schemes, new traffic flow patterns, whatever it was. My job was to increase that job every time I came out. And it became a running joke with a client like, Leo, how much are you going to soak me this time? Right? The client would always say that. And I would take that as a huge compliment, right? They understand my job. My job is to maximize profit and to give them the best quality job. And I would always refer to resale value. It's never the budget. How much do you want to increase the resale value of your home? Right? Everybody else talks budget, which
Yeah.
I think is a huge mistake.
well,
right?
Leo, I totally agree. Everything should be purchased based on value. So just because someone has $5 doesn't mean they shouldn't spend 6 or 7 if it's a better investment, or they just enjoy the product or service better at the higher price point.
Mhm. And the compliment that I would keep hearing is, Leo, you made my basement so much better than upstairs. I'm thinking of moving downstairs and renting the upstairs. That was a huge compliment. I mean, think
Well,
about it.
but you're still in your early 20s at this time, it sounds like. If
Yes,
this is
yes.
in your like over 40 years ago now, was this an actual running business that was like a true business, or was this just something you're doing on the side at this time?
Well, I'm still going to school. At this point, I'm still believing that I'm an architect, right? I'm thinking this is a side hustle, and eventually I'm going to be an architect. Then, at George Brown College at this point, however old you are at college, and I'm terrible with numbers. I remember having a visiting professor. He was an architect, and I asked the wrong question. I said, how long is it? And he had seen some of my work. And I said, how long is it before I get my own projects and start doing my own designs? And he goes, oh, Leo, don't even worry about that. It's going to be at least 20, 25 years. I thought, holy crap, that's the wrong answer, right? And that totally changed the trajectory of my planned career at that point. I said, 20 years, I mean, screw that. I'm not going to slave away behind somebody's desk doing somebody else's designs. That's not for me. And besides, at this point, I'm realizing, hey, I'm running a successful business. Why do I want a job as an architect? I'm not planning to start my own architectural firm. So why would I slave away for 20 years doing somebody else's design? A couple of weeks later, maybe a month later, I quit. And I kept thinking, I should go back and get that piece of toilet paper so I can frame and put it on the wall. Why? I'm running a successful business. Why do I need a piece of toilet paper on the wall? So that's when I quit and never looked back. I still love design, still love landscape design, architectural design, but no, I'm not the type to sit behind the desk.
So Leo, even though you decided not to go down the traditional path to be an architect, you were a designer, at least, right? You were designing it, a build out. Maybe you weren't designing the building and the structure, but you were certainly able to design and build out that basement that apparently some of your clients liked more than the upper levels, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, no, the design part I loved. And we actually came up with a concept because I had to get the clients to buy in, right? And I would never say, Mrs. Jones, can you afford $80,000 for your basement? I would say, we're going to design it in a way where you have positive cash flow from the tenants, and we're going to guarantee the tenants for 10 years. So again, we're not talking budget. We're talking about income. So it's completely the opposite of the conversations we hear today.
Smart.
right? So I'm talking about a $200 a month cash flow or $300 a month cash flow. I'm not talking about, you know, them refinancing their house and making this risk. And, you know, I was serious about, you know, guaranteeing the tenants for 10 years because I was going through the process and I was building a list of people that wanted quality apartments. So all the people, when we had an open house, and we actually tried to stage it. I would steal furniture from my parents' house. I would steal furniture from whatever. I would go to flea markets to find Chinese red wallpaper to create, you know, a room, um, uh, you know, a staged room. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was back then. But I knew that people were visual people. And if I couldn't do a physical staging, I would do a staging in their mind. I would use their brain because brain capacity is huge. I would say, this is where, you know, the fireplace is going to go. This is where, you know, the couch is. So imagine walking around the couch, looking at the fireplace, the TV is going to be on top, the lamps on the other side. You're going to have two different lighting moods. If you're going to read, you're going to sit in this chair to read. There's an overhead lamp. And I would paint that very detailed picture in their mind, what it was going to look like. So I would use their brain to do the selling for me. And I found that I was very, very good at that. And it progressed from there. We, you know, at one point we were flipping 12 houses a month because we were using that type of mentality. So I wanted to create ambition with a client. And when you saw their eyes light up and they saw the opportunity, I knew I could build on that opportunity. This is how the budgets kept increasing.
But Leo, you didn't have any competition. I've never heard of anyone doing this type of project. It's one thing to have a contractor come in and you hire them to finish a basement. And then maybe you have the idea ahead of time as the homeowner, the building owner, to rent out that space. But for you to come in with a turnkey idea saying, I've got a business opportunity, don't worry about what you spend because it's going to be paid for by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's
exactly.
Bob, have you ever heard of anything like that on the contractor
No,
side?
that's a genius concept, very smart way of looking at things, because you just, as contractors or as business owners, you got to create what the problem is and know how to solve it. So if you can solve people's problems or present a problem that may not exist, but show them that it's a problem that they have right now, but I can solve it for you and make you money, that's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, and keep in mind back then, because, you know, waterproofing basements wasn't exactly a thing, right? So a lot of people didn't finish basements. So, and a lot of people didn't know how to waterproof. A lot of people didn't know it was a possibility. So you present the problem and you present the solution at the same time, or you present a solution before the problem.
Yeah.
Then they start seeing opportunities. And, you know, it's like the, who was it that went to India? Somebody was working for a shoe company, went to India and said, you know, there's no opportunity here. Nobody wears shoes, right? The second salesman goes to India and says, holy crap, nobody wears shoes. What a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So it's how you look at it,
Yeah.
right? It's about creating opportunity. It's either you see a glass half full or half empty. But, you know, I love the construction industry. It's the most profitable industry since 1920. I mean, there's so many opportunities in the construction industry, and no matter what you touch, you should be making a ton of money. That's how I feel about the construction industry.
No, I agree. And when it comes to residential, more so than, you know, commercial property, is that residential is almost always in demand. The office space or other commercial space, retail space may ebb and flow with the economy, but these people have to sleep somewhere, right? So if they have to sleep somewhere, they need to be in an apartment, or they need to be in a townhouse, or they have to be in their own freestanding home. And people love to spend money on their homesteads, on their properties. And so you're right, construction is so important. People will spend the money, and if you position it properly, and you've really positioned it well, then it's really a no-brainer. There are so many people who can put up 2x4s and put up the sheetrock and float, and they're just construction workers and they can sell. But what you did was kind of different. You sold an idea, then said, okay, we'll execute now and put the studs up. And that's just incredible.
Yeah. But we hit a glass ceiling. Because at that point, we're building some nice basements, and we've got a lot of work, and we've got a number of crews, and I'm training the crews to have two skills. The framers also install the drywall. So when you have two skills, so they go from one job to the next, then when they finish the framing there, then the first project is ready for the drywall. So we keep bouncing crews around because they're involved in two different skills, and we're pumping out these things, and we're getting some nice reviews. But I'm a guy who hates leaving money on the table. So here we are building some beautiful basements, and I'm having regular meetings with the clients and giving progress reports and trying to get the upstairs done now. You know, I'm trying to remove walls and redo their kitchen and bathrooms and so on. But I'm hitting a stone wall, because each time that I say, you know, we're always meeting in the kitchen. So I'm saying, you know, we can update this kitchen. We can give you a beautiful dream kitchen here for $250 a month. Then the pushback that I always get is, you know, Leo, you guys are great at building basements, but what do you know about kitchens? And I go, oh, wait a minute. Didn't I just build you a beautiful kitchen downstairs, right? I had to break the concrete. I had to put in the drain system. I had to bring the supply lines. I had to do all that. I don't have to do anything with this kitchen because everything's already done. All I'm going to do is replace the cabinets, replace the flooring, do the lighting. You know, it's much easier up here, but I still had a hard time because now I'm being perceived as jack of all trades and master of none, right? This is how we came up with 22 different franchises. And ultimately, that's where we sold the company, the original company, because we had, you know, a painting franchise, we had a roofing franchise, we had, you know, a landscaping franchise, and so on. Because again, I hated leaving money on the table. That first client, or to get that initial client, costs a lot of money in terms of referrals and time invested in building a trusted relationship. So as soon as you build a trusted relationship with them and you do the job, they're happy, you move on. No. I want more work from them, right? I want the landscaping, I want the maintenance, I want the roof, I want everything else, right? And you know, if you try and do that all under one umbrella, that's where you become jack of all trades and possibly master of none. But 22 different franchises. We even had at one point we had 5 retail flooring locations, so we could specialize in that part of it. So then we got into flipping.
So explain how it worked with the different franchises. You had these different divisions, if you will. So it made it look
separate companies, different people owned the franchises, and they would refer business to each other.
Okay, so you didn't have interest in these other companies.
No, we would sell the franchises, and we would create marketing systems for them.
Okay.
You know, classified ads were really big at that point, and that's how we got a lot of the leads. When we started our first website, you know, we were dominating the market because nobody else did. Yeah, but they were referring business to each other.
And that's a great model because they complement each other. It's all home improvement, right?
Yeah. And when you're operating under the same name, it really made sense. But what I really loved was the next level when I started flipping real estate. You know, at one point we were flipping about 12 houses a month, and sometimes we'd make, you know, $30,000, $80,000. And a lot of times we didn't even get a chance to send in a crew to clean it up and do cosmetic work. We would just flip the paper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, real estate is huge, was huge, is huge today. But it's becoming more and more difficult for the average contractor to even own real estate because, you know, salaries have gone up by, you know, 27% over the last 15, 20 years. And real estate prices have gone up by 148%. So the gap is getting bigger and bigger. And this is where it's more important to have a well-designed business. And if you have a job, you're screwed, right? You're screwed. So anyone that's in the construction industry that has a job and doesn't have a business, get a business as quickly as possible.
Because
That
it
would be
gives you
my
more
advice.
options, right? As a business owner, you
Yeah.
can make as much money as you would like, and you can also leverage different things, correct?
Exactly. Exactly. Because a paycheck will not catch up to inflation. And when governments can just print money at will, I mean, corruption. I mean, our government, don't get me started on our government. You know, my LinkedIn profile has been deleted 8 times because I keep going after them. But it's corruption. It's incredible. You know, our Prime Minister Trudeau should be in jail. I'm not afraid to say that. And RCMP has been monitoring my phones, and they froze my bank account for 2 weeks. And, you know, I'm pretty vocal about that.
Did you like his father, Pierre?
He was a better leader.
Mhm.
I mean, I was not really involved in Pierre's time. I was, you know, too
Younger,
busy
yeah.
with, but uh, we need to change. We
Well,
need to,
so to your point, whenever you can't, you know, if you're part of, if you're living in the area where you're not part of the solution, have you considered running for some sort of political office at this point?
no, I keep encouraging other people to do it.
I don't blame you.
No,
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for that. No,
Yeah.
there's no money in it. But well, wait a minute.
Well,
I
it
take,
depends.
no, there's no money if you do it ethically,
There
right?
you go. That's right, Leo. That's true. So where are you today as far as your business? I mean, you started young, you've done a lot of things. Where do you stand today? How do you help not just yourself, but other people?
Well, I help my employees. Believe it or not, if you look at my Facebook posts, oftentimes when I hire a VA, I hire them, or social media managers. I hire them for a time frame, and I say, you know, bust your ass off for me for, you know, 12 months, 18 months, and I'll help you start your own business. I'll finance you. This is the same thing we do for our roofing company. As an example, I'm part owner of a roofing company, and for 24 years, my partner had a really hard time attracting talent. Really hard time. And he had, you know, the core group of people that treated the new people like crap, and we couldn't get beyond the core group of people. And so we decided to focus on it, rebranding, you know, differentiation, aggressive marketing systems and procedures, and everything else. And within about 4.5, 5 months, we tripled the workforce. So 24 years, he was under $2 million and stuck there. And because of the new ideas, he's going to hit $5 million this year.
Wow.
Okay. So 24 years stuck under, well,
Yeah.
the highest he was 2.2, 1.8 and back, but he kept hitting that $2 million ceiling, couldn't break it because of the revolving door with staff. Once we solve that problem, now we're going to hit $5 million, and he no longer wants to sell.
You know, it's really amazing, Leo, because what happens a lot with operators and you know, really in any business is they often get comfortable with their $2-3 million, and they're there going up and down for 5-6 years, a decade, until something happens. And it's usually something here. It's like, okay, what can we do different? Do we need a coach to, you know, help us? Do we need a mentor? Do we need to bring in money from the outside? Do we need to merge or whatever? And it's, you know, it's interesting. It's usually here. And then they look back and say, I can't believe for 2 decades, I was at a ceiling of 3 million, and we're going to be doing 30 million soon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was the same thing that when I looked at the mudder, bring in a 12-inch blade when I was using a 3-inch blade. You know, it's mind, but why didn't I think of that? You know,
Yeah.
it's so simple, but often the solutions are so simple and so obvious that people say, well, it can't be that obvious. It can't be that simple. But it usually is that simple. Usually the simplest solution is the best solution. So
Yeah,
So
that's why
I'm
working
So
smarter might be better than working harder. People say, I got to work hard.
absolutely.
The harder
Yeah.
I work, the more I'll make. And I'll be honest with you, the smarter I've worked, the less I work and the more I make. And there's only so many hours in the day. So how does Elon Musk make billions? Okay.
Mhm.
He has no more time than we do. And even if, even if he worked 24/7 and I'm only working 8 hours, his numbers are still way bigger than mine, but he's obviously using smart somehow, some leverage, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But even Elon Musk going to Mars still doesn't use trial and error like the rest of us do. Right? Everybody, every everyone that I know, most people that I know in the construction industry, they start working with this and they learn by trial and error. Even though they know other people and they belong to Facebook groups, one of the groups that I manage has 334,000 people in it. How many people ask other people for advice? Less than 1%.
Yeah.
But yet there's so many successful people in the group, but we insist on learning everything by trial and error. Our egos prevent us from asking for help,
Especially men.
especially men. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
And you fell into this on accident. So like, what was your family's business? I mean, what was the life of being in your family like?
Well, having 5 brothers and sisters and being beat up, I mean, we have a very loving family, but we were aggressive. We're loud and obnoxious. Family events, I mean, there's 5 dogs around me right now, all napping. But we come from a very large family, and we are a very loving family, but I'm the only entrepreneur in the family.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
Which my little brother was my employee for a while, but that never hire family. But that didn't last too long. But yeah, and I'm the only one that's unvaccinated in my family, and I get a lot of flack for that. So, so sometimes you have to be different. I don't apologize. I retired 4 times already. The first time I retired, I was 25 years old. Um, I have my own path. I love talking to other people. I love talking to other people who can challenge my mindset. I sit in front of a coaching group every Friday to rip my ideas apart. And you have to get to a place where you're uncomfortable and you have to feel naked, because if you don't challenge yourself, if I don't challenge myself, I'm not growing mentally, and I can't live with myself. Because again, you wake up one day, you're 64 years old, and you say, "What the hell happened?" Right? I don't. I'm not comfortable with that. One of my dreams, and the love of my life just moved to Mexico. Long story, after 7 years, again, because of COVID mandates, freedom of speech, and China, with the Trudeau government, she really felt unsafe that she moved her whole family. We had 2 weeks to sell, 3 houses, furniture, 4 cars, and move people. They lost millions of dollars because they strongly believed in this. And that's why I'm single again, thinking, okay, I met the love of my life. I don't have to, worry about that anymore. And now I'm starting all over again. Right. So sometimes life throws you a curve, and no matter how much planning you've done, you start all over again. But this is where contingency plans, and you have to have a sense of humor, because if you don't, you're going to go crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Leo, we could talk forever. We got to go.
Warned you. I warned
Yes.
you. Yes, we could.
Awesome. Would you mind if we put your contact information in the show notes so people can track you down and get your
Absolutely.
advice? Because I'm sure you'd love to talk more to people.
Absolutely. I love talking to people, especially people who are ambitious and want to improve their lives, because helping other people, I'm really helping myself. And I keep teaching my employees the best way to learn is to teach. So if you're going to teach something, the first thing you're going to do is do research, because you don't want to look like an idiot, right? So teaching forces you to do research. I read a lot of books. I have a whole library that I share with people. So if you're going to contact me, be prepared to go through the library because I'm going to make you learn.
Leo, you sound a lot like me. I love it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Bob, I'm sure you
Yeah.
appreciate Leo as well.
Yeah, 100%. I enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot more about you, Leo. You know, you've had a really amazing life, and we really appreciate your time on the podcast today.
I appreciate your time as well, and life is just beginning.
Once again, Leo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you.
Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects, my ideas I'm pursuing. No matter what the problem, the solution, I'm proving it. Let's talk about it and open up the dialogue. Contractors, telling their stories about how they got it started.